Now, Donald Trump has been getting attacked by neoconservatives over his recent remarks on George W. Bush being president during 9/11. Now, more surprising than neocons going after Donald Trump, the GOP frontrunner, is who's now defending him. None other than MSNBC's Chris Matthews.
What strikes me about the campaign so far is that it took a political newcomer, Trump, to say something we already knew, but nobody had said before. That President George W. Bush did not keep us safe in the 8 years he was president of the United States. He didn't keep us safe, or the people in those planes, those 4 planes, safe that day. He didn't keep those safe, those men and women forced to choose between jumping from a 100-story roof and being killed by the smoke and the fire. And he didn't keep safe the hundreds of firefighters killed that day doing their courageous duty. So why did his brother make such a claim? Why did Jeb tell the audience at a Republican debate last week, and to great and expected applause, that his brother kept us safe? He said it because he knew he could not only get away with it, but could trigger a wild cheer for it, because he knew the country had been told to not look at what steps were taken and not taken in the hours, days, weeks, months before September 11, 2001. We've been told not to look at the casualties we've taken in Iraq, a war that had nothing to do with 9/11, except that a president and his strong-minded advisors had used 9/11 to justify a war they wanted for their own reasons. Well, the partisans of President George W. Bush say we can't say this, any of it. His brother Jeb says that only those in the country's margins even think this. Really? We were hit here in our country, the homeland, as the ideologues have gotten us to call it now, by a concerted, highly coordinated attack using our commercial airliners and our training, and no one is to blame. But when an outpost 400 miles from the capital city in a North African country with nothing approaching a normal security situation, well then Hillary Clinton back in the United States is painted as the villain, as if it was she who left the window open that night. Again, I want to thank Trump and Jeb, of course, for finally getting this one out in the open by throwing out the red meat by saying he kept us safe. Jeb let us know what we knew already, that actually W didn't keep us safe, did he?
Wait a minute. You're thanking Trump and Jeb Bush for bringing this to light. An issue that, as you said, we already knew. And that people were saying for a very, very long time. They get the credit. Okay, great. This is Chris Matthews. See, Chris Matthews is, in my opinion, a partisan political hack. And he's pretending to have disagreed with Bush on 9/11 and on Iraq. You see, here's some examples of Chris Matthews sucking up to the George W. Bush administration. In one of his monologues, Matthews said of Iraq, "We were given a rare opportunity to hear the real philosophy of this administration with regard to the war in Iraq. A powerful rendition by the president of why we're there. When he talked about the fact that we can support emerging democracies in the Middle East, and that's the only way we can prevent future 9/11s, you're getting to the heart of why this administration is fighting the war in Iraq. This president is ready to fight like a rock through the rest of his terms. He made it clear that he's going to fight as long as it takes to develop a democracy in Iraq, and there's not going to be any change come September." Now, some actual gushing. We're proud of our president. Americans love having a guy as president, a guy who is a little swagger, who's physical. And this was in 2003. In 2005, sometimes it glimmers with this man, our president, that kind of sunny nobility. Ugh. Another 2005 quote from Chris Matthews. "I like him. Everybody sort of likes the president, except for the real whack jobs. Maybe on the left." Really? Really? Whack jobs on the left. Okay. Now, another quote in 2006. A little bit of Lincoln there, I think, referring to Bush, admitting that telling Iraqi insurgents to bring it on in 2003 sent the wrong signal to people. So, kind of like Lincoln, a sunny nobility. Everybody loves the president except for the whack jobs. This guy was humping George W. Bush's leg during his entire presidency, and even got Phil Donahue fired for opposing the Iraq War. And now he comes out and praises Donald Trump for actually criticizing George W. Bush and saying, yeah, you know what? I agree. He didn't keep us safe. He didn't keep us safe. You could have fucking said that years ago, dude. You could have said that years ago. In Chris Matthews' mind, it seemed like for a while Bush could do no wrong. Quote, we were given a rare opportunity to hear the real philosophy of this administration with regard to the war to Iraq. Well, what philosophy? The philosophy of lies? Of using 9/11 as a reason to go into Iraq when they're completely unrelated? Something that you didn't exactly mention. You said that he kept us safe. You supported the Iraq war, at least in the open. Or at least you weren't opposed to it. Now, maybe personally you were against the war in Iraq, but you certainly didn't do it in your show. You certainly didn't come out hard against it until later. Instead, you were basically attached. Your lips were basically attached to George Bush's ass for all of those quotes for years. And then you want to pretend that you were against the Iraq war. That you were critical of Bush all along. Bullshit. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. That's what I said. This is why Chris Matthews, in my opinion, is just nothing more than a partisan political hack. And as far as criticizing George W. Bush on Iraq and 9/11, well, fine. It's good that he's finally joined the party, but it's a little too little, too late.